very proud to have with us the UNHCR Director, Márια Stavropoulos, who had held this position since July 2024. She was appointed by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees and has over 30 years of experience, including having a JD from the Harvard Law School. Welcome to Radio البلد. I want to start in general by, if you can give our audience an idea of the work of your organization, of the UN organization. Which refugees are you working with? Everybody knows about the Syrians, but do you also work with other refugees? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So, as you know, UNHCR works around the world, providing protection and assistance, protecting the rights of refugees, who are people who have fled their countries because of war and persecution. And this is, of course, here the case in Jordan as well. We have been working here for many, many years. And here in Jordan, as you say, we work with the Syrian refugees who have been here since for the past 14 years. But what exactly, as you said, what people don't really know is that there are other refugees from other countries, such as, for example, Iraqis, Sudanese, Yemeni, Somali. In fact, we have refugees from 35 different countries.
And you provide them with what? What do you provide?
Refugees in Jordan, first of all, I need to say, on the whole, feel quite welcome. Jordan has been a very warm host for refugees over decades, and I'm not talking only about the Syrians in the last 14 years. We go back for a long, long time when it comes to Jordan's legendary hospitality towards refugees. So the role of UNHCR is to assist the refugees, of course, to assist Jordan in hosting refugees. And this is exactly what we're doing now, as you know very well. Some Syrian refugees, not all, but about 1/5 of them, live in camps, in Zaatari and Azraq camps. But most refugees live outside among the host communities in urban areas, in rural areas. That, again, is not 1/5, I'm sorry, but 20% of the refugees are in the camps. Yes.
Now, let's dive into the Syrian refugee issue. Syrian refugees came during the conflict, the civil war, and now average person would say, the war is over. Assad regime has fell. Why aren't they returning? So what's the status of the Syrian? How many are still here? How many have returned? And what is the UNHCR doing about that?
Since December 2024, that's almost now exactly a year since the Assad government fell, 170,000 Syrian refugees who are registered with UNHCR have returned from Jordan to Syria. Now, very frequently when I mention this number, I get two very different reactions. One reaction is some people will say, why haven't all Syrian refugees gone back? Or definitely, why not a much bigger number? And the reason we know from the refugees themselves is that because despite the fact that the great majority of them do want to return back to Syria one day, the situation in Syria at the moment doesn't allow them to do so.
Is it security or economics or both?
It's both. So it is security. In some parts of Syria, we still have a lot of instability. But it's also economic. So people, first of all, the first concern refugees share with us is that they don't have a house to return to. Either their house is completely destroyed or partially destroyed. So that's concern number one, but there are other concerns, such as, for example, there are not enough schools, there are not enough hospitals. There's still a lot of mines and remnants of war, which means that roads can't be cleared. Debris can't be cleared, and there is an issue of having jobs as well. So that is why, again, when I mentioned this number, I won't qualify it as high or low, but this number of people who have gone back, some people actually believe that this is a very high number because of the conditions in which people go back. Again, because we talk, of course, with the refugees all the time and we carry out intention surveys quite frequently, this is what refugees tell us. They tell us that the great majority, they do want to go back one day, but only 22% tell us that they see themselves going back in the next 12 months. So this is very telling.
So you said 175,000 registered refugees return. Now, can you give us an idea of how many have stayed registered and how many are here that you think are unregistered that live in Jordan?
So 170,000 have gone back to Syria, and that means that over 430,000, 440,000 Syrians, because as I said earlier, we have refugees from other nationalities as well, still remain in
These
Jordan.
are registered refugees.
These are the registered refugees. Now, we know that there are Syrians who were here in Jordan before the latest Syria crisis. And those have not been registered with UNHCR. And that's why we always make the distinction when we talk about those who have been registered with UNHCR.
I see. So now you're supporting especially the camps, especially Zaatari, but as you said, there are refugees outside of the camps. What are the conditions of these? What are the needs? How is the budget of UNHCR addressing all these needs? What are the challenges that you're having?
You're asking me very many questions.
Yeah.
And so I will take them one by one. I would like to start by saying that refugees are very poor. Very many refugees tell us that they cannot meet their daily needs. In part, this has to do with the fact that humanitarian assistance for refugees has been decreasing over the past couple of years, which means that refugees can't meet their basic needs and they end up, for example, sending their children to work or taking out loans, borrowing money from relatives and friends, or they're late with paying their rent. And this is a downward spiral, unfortunately. And in addition, many refugees cannot find work, or the work they find is very low paying. Jordan has an economy that has been very resilient given the successive challenges it has faced. But the number of jobs for Jordanians and refugees is simply not enough. And so this is why so many refugees find themselves in these dire conditions. And we constantly, of course, appeal to the donor community to stay the course, not to assume that the issue of refugees in Jordan has been in any way solved. And there are needs that need to be met. And what we hear from the refugees increasingly is that even though they feel that they are not ready to go back to Syria, for the reasons that we were mentioning earlier, security and economic, they feel that they can no longer make ends meet, and that therefore they feel that we are collectively pushing them back to Syria, which is far from the truth. And I do want to add one word on that, and this is that the government of Jordan has been steadfast in its commitment to not force refugees back home. And this is tremendously important. It is a global human value, and we are very grateful to Jordan for that.
Is it possible for a person to go and return, maybe do a pilot study, go and see if they can manage and then come back, or if they leave, that's it? Is that the problem? Is that they don't have an opportunity to test if they can go back?
It is not entirely accurate, actually. Refugees can apply for a re-entry permit. So it means before they go back, they can apply to be able to come back, and then they can come back and essentially remain as refugees. So when we discuss with the refugees, when refugees come to UNHCR and they ask for information on the conditions in Syria, on the conditions for leaving, we do explain all these different regulations so that they are fully aware and they can take an informed decision as to whether to go back or not at this time.
So there is the opportunity to do that. That's good.
Yes.
If you would list the top 3 challenges that you have, what are the top 3 issues that you really want to see changed, that really keep you awake at night? What are the problems that you really would like to see resolved?
The most important one is the issue now of the funding, because, and I'm not talking only about UNHCR, by the way, I'm talking about the community of partners that support the refugee response and which UNHCR coordinates because of its mandate. All the partners in the response to the needs of the refugees, all the partners, they have suffered significant funding reductions this year. The reductions have been both significant in amounts but also in the speed. So what this means is that for one thing, UNHCR's budget has not is far from being filled this year, far from being met. And the fact that this applies to all partners doesn't make things any easier. But then the question, of course, is, well, what can one do about it? So one thing that has kept us awake at night is trying to meet the most urgent needs of the refugees by very quickly redesigning the operation and reprioritizing. And when one reprioritizes in such a drastic fashion, that means that some needs will just simply not met, and they are very important needs. So it's we are operating in a complex environment, but this in UNHCR we're used to operating in complex environments.
So you said funding, the donor fatigue. What about other areas? Is the medical, education? What are the other areas that also you would like to see attention given to?
The one of the most important impacts of the funding reductions has been the health services in the camps. Outside the camps, refugees have access to the national public health system, which the international donor community supports. But in the camps, we have health services that are run by humanitarian actors, essentially. And the funding reduction has impacted those services, you see. And what does that mean? That means that refugees with health needs that are not very acute, they need to wait for longer and longer to get, for example, a surgery that is not so urgent. And many refugees can't wait because, you know, when it comes to health, often we can't wait. So they end up going to private service providers, which means that they borrow money to pay for their health services and so forth. One thing that is very important to note here is that many charities, let me say this, or non-governmental organizations, including from outside Jordan, send medical missions and perform surgeries in hospitals in Jordan not just for refugees, but also for vulnerable Jordanians and others, even a few patients from Gaza, who, for one or the other reason, can't access those services in a timely manner. And UNHCR facilitates these missions. And this is a very important demonstration how, despite all of the doom and gloom when it comes to the funding environment, there are still people and organizations who believe in our shared humanity and do whatever they can.
Do you want to mention them?
We had one mission just last week that was organized by the Islamic Relief USA. And they supported the mission of 12 medical experts, surgeons and others, who came here, and they carried out, those came from the Association of Physicians of Pakistani origin from North America. And they performed over 80 surgeries.
Wow.
Not only for refugees in the Jordan University Hospital. And it was really a demonstration, as I was saying earlier, of partnership, of solidarity from human beings to other human beings who are just not very lucky.
Now, your mission here is done as an invitation of the Jordanian government, and the Jordanian government controls security in other areas and education, so on. How do you rate the relations with the Jordanian government? What areas would you like to see even improvements? And what advice do you have on how that relation is going on?
The relationship between Jordan and UNHCR has been a very strong one. And we have worked very well together, and the Jordanian government has, I would say, has allowed many policies, many very interesting and innovative policies to be tested basically in Jordan. And I'm talking about, several years ago, for example, when private sectors stepped in and created very large solar plants that benefited both the camps and as well the communities outside the camps. So we have many examples like that, thanks to the attitude of openness that Jordan has always demonstrated. So now going forward, what we are looking at together with the government is how do we now adjust how we work together in view of the fact that we have refugees going back to Syria who are actually asking for support to go back to Syria. And how do we do that in a manner that will benefit both Jordan and the economy of Jordan and the economy of Syria? How do we, for example, make sure that the skills that refugees have acquired in Jordan in the past years will eventually be put to the service of their own country? And how will this transition work in a way that will be for the benefit of everybody?
Now, you worked in Syria during the Assad regime, and do you think that there are things that the current government in Syria can help? Is there attempts to coordinate this issue with the Syrian government?
My colleagues in Damascus, of course, in Syria, they work very closely with the new authorities there. The challenges, as I was saying earlier, are immense, not only because several hundred thousands of refugees have gone back to Syria despite the situation, but also well over 1 million of people who were displaced inside Syria have returned now to their areas of origin. And that means that the communities where they are returning are under tremendous strain. So we work closely with them. We also know and appreciate the efforts that the Jordanian government and the Jordanian people have made precisely to help Syria through this very tough transition time. And we are all hoping, and I really think I'm speaking here on behalf of everyone, we're all hoping that the situation in Syria will continue to stabilize and improve for the benefit of its people and for the benefit of the region.
Now, you mentioned the Jordanian people, and we are a radio station in Amman. Most of our listeners are living in the capital. Also, we on social media will reach outside. What is the message you'd like to send to the Jordanian public about your work and about the refugees, whether Syrians or others?
I would like to thank our listeners and all Jordanians for what they have done for refugees here. Because what I'm hearing from refugees themselves, first of all, is a lot of gratitude. But I'm also hearing from Jordanians how they feel that this is their human, how can I say, their attitude towards life and towards society and towards humanity when it comes to refugees. In Jordan, we don't have the levels of toxicity, of negative feelings against refugees that we see in so many other countries in the world. So if there is one more thing I would ask, please continue to be like that. Please continue to be models, because so many of us will look to you, to your country, to continue to show to the world that these values are here and they are important, and that we can uphold them.
And one more message to the donor community that it's experiencing fatigue, the donor fatigue. What would you like to tell them?
We understand that the donor fatigue, because there are so many crises, and the number of donors is actually not very big. So there are many crises that are calling for their attention. But my appeal to donors since earlier this year has been to stay the course, to continue assisting the refugees, to continue assisting Jordan for hosting the refugees all these years and for the years to come. And also to say that in Jordan, the story of hosting refugees has been a good story. And we want the last chapter of that story, if we have arrived at it, of course, we want it to be a happy ending. We don't want now at the end frustrations to mount on the side of refugees and others just because of donor fatigue.
They say the average refugee stays in a refugee country for 17 or 18 years. Would you say that the same would apply to the Syrian refugees?
To some, probably yes. But at least now there is a ray of hope. At least there is a ray of hope now, at least when it comes to Syria.
On that note, we will end. Salman, thank you very much. شكرا لكم للاستماع. هذا كنا مع السيدة ماريا ستافروبولو، المديرة المفوض العام لمفوضية اللاجئين، تحدث عن سوريا وعن باقي الدول. شكرا.